We will call the Board of Supervisors meeting back to order. The next item on the agenda is public comment period. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board on any issue at all? If so, please come forward, state your name and your voting district. Mr. Manster, good to see you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Stephen Manster. My wife feels that I reside at 117 Butler Street in Bowling Green.
I'm sure she does.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this evening I'd like to take some time to inform the board of some activities that are occurring in Bowling Green and to ask your permission to use certain pieces of county property that would help us bring about those activities. And the activities relate to our Christmas time events in Bowling Green. The first activity is our Christmas parade. And our Christmas parade this year will occur on December 12th, and it will begin at 5 o'clock in the evening. Now, this is a new format for us, and we've changed things based on community requests. We will stage the parade and have our starting point at the corner of Main and Broadus Avenue, and units will arrive and be stored and be staged at the Food Lion Shopping Center. My first request is that if we are fortunate enough to have the number of units that we would like, there may be a need to have an overflow area for the holding and the turning of different units, and we would ask if we could use the parking lot at the county office building at the corner of Broadus and Anderson Avenue, the Community Development Office, just to have units stay at the parking lot until they're ready to move out and have them turn their units around, if we could do that. We, of course, would invite all members of the board to participate in the parade. We would love to have you there riding in vehicles, and if you would choose to do that, please let Mr. Ashcraft know, and Mr. Ashcraft and I could coordinate getting vehicles for you to ride in, but we would love to have you participate in the parade.
Will those be equipped with cages?
Beg your pardon?
Will those be equipped with cages that surround you? So that
if that's a desire for the board, we can see if we can make that happen. There will also be a number of activities going on throughout town on December 12th. And we've already requested of Judge Rebercombe his permission to use certain court facilities. And these are some of the things that we'd like to do. We'd like to have guided tours of our historic courthouse, and we've asked his permission to do that. We would also, of course, like to use the courthouse lawn for people to congregate. The judge's stand would be across Main Street from the courthouse lawn, so we anticipate a substantial number of people actually staying on the lawn, and we've asked his permission to do that. We would also like to use the parking lot behind the museum building, the small parking lot there. What we'd like to do is to have Christmas trees available for sale, with the sale benefiting the Caroline County Museum and Cultural Center. Also, we have asked for permission to string some Christmas lights, some white lights, on the trunks of the trees on the courthouse lawn. And we think that that would be a nice addition to our activities. Now, to the extent that we need this board's permission to conduct those activities, I'm here this evening to request that permission. So use of the court area and, of course, the parking lot at the Community Development Office.
Okay. After we close the public comment period, we'll certainly take up those issues.
I appreciate that, sir. There will be other activities going on in the museum building and the town hall, art shows, gift shops, and storytelling opportunities. Also, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to inform the board of two actions that our town council took at our last meeting. I think this would be of interest to the board. Town council approved the free use of town hall for the county to use for its annual Christmas party, and we're very happy to do that for the county. In addition, the town council allocated $500 to the museum effort, because the council is very supportive of that effort, and the $500 would be used toward the purchase of insurance services for the board of directors and for the county museum. And our council is very pleased to do that. And that concludes my report, sir, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Bannister. We appreciate that. And after public comment period is closed, if the board has any questions, we'll ask you to come back up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board on any issue at all?
Good evening,
Mayor?
Mr. Chairman,
Good evening.
Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board, staff, Mr. Ashcraft. My name is David Stork. Live on Milford Street in Bowling Green District. I'm here tonight as representing the town council as mayor of town of Bowling Green. As a request from your board through your county administrator to our town manager, we were asked to give some input and opinion on the enhancement grant, the T21 Washington Rochambeau Victory Park. And so at our meeting last Thursday, Bowling Town Council discussed the issue, and I'm here tonight to inform you of the council's motion that was made and our wishes, and hope that you'll take those into consideration as you move forward. And I'd like to say that back in 2006, I think when the grant was written and possibly won, it was before I was mayor, but our mayor at the time and our town council wrote a letter of endorsement of that grant when it was submitted. So the town endorsed that concept then, and we still endorse that concept. And I'd like to just a little history. I know that when the grant was written and received, the modern jail that was torn down was still there and not really identified as being torn down in the initial grant. And also at the time, the new museum concept was not a concept. So those two things are new to this whole T21 discussion. The council appreciates the difficulties involved in writing and submitting grants, and we know that we don't take those type of things lightly. They're tough to do and tough to receive. And I was not on council, but I remember at the time I was asked to make some calls to the Commonwealth Transportation Board members in support of that, and we did. And so we understand the importance of those grants and how, once they're received, the implications, if they're not carried out, what the implications are on future grants, and the difficulty it puts on staff members to write future grants. I think the consensus of council in our discussion before our motion was that there was discussion about we're fully on board and understand the tough economic times. And if you remember, when we won the grant, and we had a couple of meetings regarding planning the park and studies and money that was spent on drawings, the town was very interested in participating. And then when those discussions kind of waned because of the times, you never heard a word from the council regarding what's happening, let's move forward, because we understand we're in difficult times. And I think the consensus of council is if the county does not, if the Board of Supervisors deems it's not appropriate to move forward because of financial constraints, we certainly understand that, and we're not pushing you to do so. But in light of recent discussions, the council feels like if the money is barred, and if your board decides that possibly the grant should be moved somewhere else or used in some other fashion, then the town council of Bowling Green is not in favor of that. We are very much, in our motion stated at our meeting was that we are in favor of the Washington Rochambeau Victory Park concept to move forward as proposed, with the addition that we understand now that the museum, which is a wonderful addition to the town, has come into play. And we would like to incorporate anything we could do to support that museum within this initial grant. And so we would like to see that the Washington Rochambeau Victory Park move forward as proposed, not be watered down and moved somewhere else. And the town of Bowling Green would like to have the same place at the table during planning that we had initially, along with, I think, the sheriff's office and other key players, because this park, I think, was necessary then for street closure reasons, for safety, for green space, for additional parking, and it's still necessary now. So we would like to see it move forward, but we would like to be a key player at that table as we move forward in the decision of how it looks and how it's implemented, keeping in mind that this new museum is right there and is a fixture of that park. So as we move forward and spend that grant money, we'd like to keep the museum in mind and the old jail that's right there, because it's certainly, you can't think of that park area without thinking of that old Commissioner of Revenue building and that old Pauley jail. So the town council would like to see things move forward as proposed. The grant money, if you elect to spend the matching money, that it be spent in Bowling Green on that park and not used somewhere else. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, ma'am. Appreciate it. Anyone else would like to address the board on any issue at all? If so, please come forward and state your name and your voting district. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board on any issue at all? Please come forward and state your name and your voting district. Seeing no further comments coming forth, the public comment period is closed. Does the board have any questions of the mayor or of Mr. Manster?
I do have one.
No, the only question I had was for Chairman, do we need a motion to allow them to utilize the facilities?
Absolutely. We need to make a motion to allow them to use the county facilities that they've wanted to make. And, I was wanting to see if there's any questions, and then after that we'll come back. Okay.
Let me ask a question, because I think it may be germane to our motion. Mr. Manster, you are, and you don't have to get up, you can just shake your head yes or no, but you are asking for use of certain county buildings, and my question is, how is the liability insurance covered under your use? I mean, if someone goes into the court and they fall, are we responsible because we insure the building normally? Are you responsible because you insure it normally, or? Because it's the county's building. Okay. So Mr. Manser is saying, for the sake of folks who can't hear, Mr. Manser is saying that since the county has insurance on those buildings, the county's insurance takes precedence. Okay. So on that same line, until we turn over the museum space, that's still officially a county building. So and especially since the lease was messed up today, if we add what we perceive to be the museum space or the former Commissioner of Revenue space to this activity, we don't necessarily have to rush and make sure we got the lease back in time. Because from what I understand, you want to use that building as part of the Bowling Green, event. It's really a Bowling Green town event, not necessarily a museum event. So, okay, that's the one thing I wanted to clarify. And in doing that, I would suggest when we make this motion that we include the Commissioner of Revenue's building as part of that motion, so that it's all part of that activity, and we can pretty much say that's the activity it's for. It's not really a museum activity right now. But that's okay with the rest of the board.
Absolutely, great point.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions? Mr. Manster or Mayor Stoll?
The only thing I have, Mr. Chairman, as long as staff doesn't have a problem with the areas that belongs to the county, make sure there's no other activities in the planning areas that you don't need them, but all right, that's all.
Okay, Mr. Popovich, did you want to make a motion?
I was hoping that Mr. Seeley would make a motion.
I was waiting for
Mr. Seeley,
discussion
go
to be over. I'd like to make a motion that we allow the town of Bowling Green access to the county space and the Commissioner of Revenue's office and the courtroom, also with permission of the judge, for the December 12th festival and parade.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Popovich, that we, well, you heard the motion as to what we are allowing the Bowling Green town to use the facilities and grounds of the county. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion's carried. Absolutely. All right. Moving on to the public hearings. The only public hearing of this evening is the proposed amendment of Chapter A130 of the Code of Caroline County Cable Television Franchise. Ms. Cosby, you want to take that one?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The ordinance before the board tonight is to repeal and replace the current cable franchise ordinance with an ordinance that is substantially shorter than the current ordinance, and essentially what it does is set forth general provisions and the manner in which cable franchises will be adopted in the county, and that is through a negotiated franchise or through the cable ordinance that's set up in state law. And this is really necessary now. The current county ordinance was adopted several years ago as part of the process of renewing the county's franchises with Comcast and then Charter. And so there was this process where at that time we were negotiating those agreements, and the cable ordinance was adopted to implement those agreements, which were fairly close to being, finalized. Then the General Assembly substantially changed state law, and those franchise agreements never were finalized, and so the ordinance that we currently have really reflects a different landscape. It was different in the statutes, and it was different what we were anticipating would happen with the franchise agreements. I'm happy to report that the MetroCast succeeded to Charter, and so that agreement has been adopted by the board, and we're doing some final tinkering with MetroCast. So we're trying to now clean up the ordinance so that we'll have an ordinance that reflects what is currently existing in state law, so that the MetroCast agreement will work within the framework of this ordinance. What the ordinance does not currently do, it doesn't include any substantive provisions that would control or set any criteria for any other franchisees. There is another provider that's currently operating in the county, and so there aren't any substantive provisions that would control that provider. MetroCast's agreement would essentially control how they operate. So the ordinance before you, again, so it sets forth how the county's going to deal with cable franchises, but again, no substantive provisions. So that is different, and that's the one thing that if the board is interested in exploring that a little bit more, we can certainly do that. Localities are much more limited in what they can do as far as regulating cable providers now under federal and state law. But there are some things that that possibly could be put into this ordinance if that's something that the board wanted us to do. Take it one step further than just here's how you're going to get an agreement, but here are some other substantive provisions. So what's before you tonight is really just the framework. But if the board would like us to look at putting some more substantive provisions, we can certainly do that as well. So, and I can answer any questions about the terms of the ordinance. It really follows what state law requires as far as when somebody comes to the county to negotiate, what happens if you don't negotiate, and what would happen if they requested a cable ordinance franchise. This ordinance, and I think Ben Emerson may have mentioned it when it was on first reading, doesn't set forth the criteria for a cable ordinance franchise because currently nobody's asking for one.
If we had the public hearing, open the public hearing this evening for this particular proposed amendment, and then we wanted more added into it that would affect and certainly give us more leverage in dealing with other cable companies, then we could continue this public hearing, or should we have another public hearing, a separate public hearing?
This public hearing could remain open. The issue would be just re-advertising, just to advise, the public, including the providers, that there would be substantive, changes and regulations to give them an opportunity to get a copy of what those changes would be. So whether this hearing is held open or it's closed and then, a new public hearing that would be advertised is held,
I still have a concern, and I've expressed this before, and I think other board members have too, with Comcast. It is almost like Comcast is thumping their nose at the citizens of Caroline County and say, there's not much you can do with what the service I'm provided for. If you don't like it, tough luck. I'm not going to do much more about it. So I would like to see us to extend this ordinance here that we're talking about tonight to be more in line of allowing us to better manage any type of franchise agreement that we would have with Comcast. And I don't think this ordinance does that the way it's written now, from what you're telling me, and that we would have to make some more improvements to it to include Comcast. So I would certainly ask this board that we do have the county attorney to look further into addressing the issues that we have with Comcast, whether it be service issues, whether it be standard issues, whatever the issues are. But I think we've at some point got to address it with Comcast and not continue to allow them to operate without a franchise agreement. Now, the other thought process is we have public hearings in the districts. I know Comcast is probably in your area, Mr. Popowitz. It's in Mr. Thomas's district. It is in your district. I'm not sure Comcast is, I don't think so. And it's in my district. And we can hold public meetings or public hearings in each of our districts and let our constituents know what's going on. But sooner or later, I think we've got to say to Comcast, either we're going to cave in and let you have a new franchise agreement, because they are telling people the reason they're not doing anything is because the county will not sign a franchise agreement with them. And so, and we're saying we're not going to sign a franchise agreement until you put something on the table that's going to protect the people that you're serving. So again, I think we have to take them to task, and if the majority of the people tell them to pull their equipment out of my community, then that's what we do. We tell them to pull it out of the community and move forward.
I guess my question is, what will we add in addition to what we have? Because we've talked about this before, and I guess it's still not clear to me what else we can put in this ordinance that's going to give us any more leverage or ability to make them perform. Because my understanding is we can't make them do anything. I guess we have a binary choice. Either constituents get angry enough and say we don't want anymore, tell them to leave, which gives us then the ability to go look for somebody, or somebody to come in and buy that. So where else can we go?
Well, under federal law, the board and the county still have the ability to regulate in the areas of equipment and facilities. And so, and of course, the county can also, seek to impose the customer service standards and the technical standards that are in federal law. So, there are some areas that we could include within this ordinance, and then those would be part of our local ordinance. And so then it would just be an enforcement issue, whether that's a technical, because there's a technical violation under federal law, or a customer service violation of federal regulations, or to the extent that we wanted, the county wanted to adopt its own provisions that addressed equipment and facilities. And, federal law is fairly broad as to what those provisions could be. So they would have to be some reasonable provisions, and then they'd be included in the ordinance. And then to the extent Comcast would not be in compliance with those, then, you know, it would be just an enforcement action like anything else, you know, to seek to enforce the ordinance in whether that would be circuit court or federal court, and, you know, and get a court order to either comply with the ordinance.
Do we have like the top 3 things that you would like to see us add that would give us leverage to do something like that?
Not right now. I mean, I think that the technical standards and then the customer service standards, you know, we could include those in there. As far as the other criteria, I don't know that I can say right now. I mean, it's definitely something that we can look into and find out what the strongest provisions would be. And I think it has a lot to do with what are the complaints that people are hearing. I mean, if those complaints are related to, you know, equipment and facilities, you know, that aren't being utilized appropriately, that's what we would put in. So it's sort of, what do the residents need? That would probably be what we would want to put in. So it's not necessarily, you know, what the lawyers would say is a good one. It would be, well, what is something that the folks, you know, in the county are dealing with? Let's put that in there, and then let's proceed, you know, accordingly with an enforcement action if, you know, if they didn't comply.
I mean, I'm with Mr. Akers. We've been hearing Comcast, and I see there are billboards everywhere. You know, news service, HD, all kinds of things, and it has never materialized in the county. And I guess what I'm trying to do is figure out what we would focus on to then leverage that into a complaint that we could win on, because obviously without winning in something, we can't help any of the customers. I guess that's, I don't have a problem waiting. I'd just like to see us focus on something that can give us leverage relatively easily and quickly.
I agree. And I think that's what we were talking about doing, is the fact that there are standard issues that can be spelled out, the service issues that can be spelled out, there are equipment issues that can be spelled out. That is not now, not currently, in any ordinance that the county has.
Are we still within state law when we start down that path, because it's changed so much?
Yes, because they have not requested a cable ordinance franchise. So most of the provisions of state law that, you know, that express what authority the county can impose on a provider, you know, the ones that are, you know, take up 4 pages of the Code of Virginia are when a provider is asked to come under a cable ordinance franchise. To date, Comcast has not done that, and so, and they don't have a negotiated agreement other than what's been on the books, you know, that's technically expired, I think, in 2003, and it's just, you know, been something that is by agreement. And so the fallback then is the Telecommunications Act, and so that still allows localities to have some you know, some authority to enforce certain provisions, and as I said, regulate equipment and facilities.
Can we leverage some of the MetroCast capabilities that they're purporting to give us and leverage that against Comcast? Since MetroCast, we technically have an agreement with, they've agreed to some things equipment-wise, service-wise. Can we use those and leverage Comcast that way?
Well, I think to the extent, I mean, I know that there are some provisions in the Comcast agreement that would fall under equipment and facilities. So to the extent that those, and I'm not, you know, saying that would absolutely be an absolute, but if there are provisions that Comcast has already, MetroCast has already agreed to deal with what they're willing to offer the county as far as equipment and facilities, you know, if those are, you know, would also be reasonable regulations of the ordinance, then yes, I think you could put those types of things in the ordinance. It's something that MetroCast is offering, and, you know, again, if it's
I'm just looking for something we can stand on and point to and say it's not unreasonable because we're already getting it here. Why aren't we getting it there? Because that to me makes more sense.
Well, that's a little difficult because MetroCast, I mean, that's a negotiated agreement. And so really we can't necessarily look and say MetroCast is willing to do this. The question is, what are we allowed to do under federal law? if some of the provisions that MetroCast is willing to give us would also be reasonable regulations under federal law. That's what I'm saying. They may be appropriate for the ordinance,
I'm just
but we
looking for
can't
a reasonable
really.
place to start to get, so that we can stand on something, because I think the faster we can stand on something, the more leverage we have with Comcast, because if they see that coming, I think that they will back up.
But kind of what you're looking for, and what we're all looking for, are those additional services above and beyond basic cable. And the federal law is basically basic cable.
Right.
You know, we can't, the state laws, okay, sorry. But anyhow, at the state level, we're still in the same position because it just refers to basic cable service. We had the problem maybe 10 years ago with Comcast Office. We had a requirement for them to have an office that wasn't in the federal legislation. It's beyond basic cable. They basically pulled out and said, "Have a nice day." You know, so we're at a definite disadvantage when it comes to negotiating with these guys, because they've got 2 levels above us, and our statute is quite watered down, even in the sense it is now. So
That's why I'm looking for some place to leverage.
the leverage comes from competition of other vendors, because Comcast has said they financially didn't see the need to upgrade as quickly. But I'll bet you $1 to a donut right now that if Verizon said we're offering FiOS to all those people that have Comcast, they would find the money to upgrade their system. That's where the difference is. And we can go round and round here. We're at the bottom of the food chain, and there's nothing we can really do in this case.
Now, for the ordinance, this doesn't affect the FiOS scenario, right? If FiOS wants to come in any part of the county where we already have a cable company, FiOS can come in. I mean, this isn't exclusive.
No, this ordinance, the one that's currently proposed, again, just sets forth the framework of what a provider would need to do to get a cable franchise.
Okay.
And so it doesn't, it's just, here's how you do it. You come to the county, you ask to enter into negotiations. If that doesn't work, you ask for a cable ordinance. But it doesn't exclude anything.
Yeah, I think Mr. Thomas is right. The competition is going to pick up and push this thing. I think that's what they're putting down Route 2 now, is do Corbin,
Right.
FiOS.
Well, that's MetroCast.
That's MetroCast.
Is Metro?
No, that's Verizon.
No, it's MetroCast.
That's MetroCast, because they're
Somebody
also.
told me he's got
Further
from
from-
FiOS this last week.
That's, yeah, from there's 2 sets of people laying cables. The first set coming from New Post down Route 2, that's probably past the VDOT station now, was Verizon. Now MetroCast went back again, and they're running their own cables. So the people on Route 2 will be able to have 57,000 channels and cable modems, and they'll also have DSL. There are 2. I stopped the first set and asked them what it was, and it was Verizon.
No, that was my question. That makes it clear, because if they come through, that would take care of all our problems.
I'll agree. If that happened, it would help.
The if in
But,
life.
That's a fact. Yeah. If a lot of things happen, there are other things that wouldn't happen. But the fact is, under the circumstances that we are trying to live under right now, can we, with the board in agreement, can we open the public hearing? We'll see what's in the comments, and after that, we leave the public hearing open and allow the county attorney to look at how she can enhance the ordinance that hopefully will give us a few more tools in dealing with Comcast in order to provide better service. I have complaints in Lake Landau especially of almost every week there's a different station, a different channel that's out of service that they're not able to get. Now, to me, that is service problems, and that is either equipment failure or something. So if we go no further than that point, we've accomplished something. But under the current regulations, I don't believe we can do any more than what's being done. And Comcast is just, again, it's just thumping their nose at us and saying, as you say, with the bottom of the food